Hello, class. I am now going to record the fifth lecture, and the topic of the lecture is direct mail and magazines, two other kinds of print. We've already talked about newspapers. But before we do that, I just want to take a sec so we kind of get our bearings and see where we are with the class. This is the detailed, I guess you could call it a class plan that is on Blackboard. I believe it's under course information. You'll see a syllabus there, but you'll also see this detailed class plan, which is an Excel chart with, I think, just about 7 columns. So let's just quickly review where we've been so far. So the first lecture was defining media and medium and talking about trends and giving you an overview of U.S. media history. You had some reading to do, which is here. This gives you basically what we're trying to accomplish in the class. Okay, then there's a discussion topic, and then there's homeworks. The next class, we got into out of home. Okay, the last unavoidable medium, some of the creative challenges. Then we got into newspapers, and hopefully you got an understanding of some First Amendment issues and how important newspapers have been historically in our country as a source of investigative reporting. We've also, in terms of homework, been asking you to do what we call MMJs, which is My Media Journey. And this, you'll recall, is I'm wanting you to write up how your day intersected with the media type that we're discussing that week. And if it doesn't normally intersect with, say, newspapers, I'm asking that you find the newspaper somewhere. There are a lot of free ones, for instance, around FIT, and that you read the newspaper and talk about it, and also find one ad in the newspaper which you're going to analyze for me. You're going to try to interpolate the copy strategy, which we use the acronym Tabasco for that: target, benefit, support, brand character, and in the case of a direct response ad, there'd be an offer. So today actually is Friday the 13th. And your first media journey report is due today. I believe I have it due by like midnight or something like that. So I know 4 or 5 of you have submitted up till now. Well, please make sure all of those get in today. And then your next one, newspaper, is due the next week. So all these assignments are due the Friday of every week. And I'm giving quizzes at the end of the readings, and that's all good. And we're also doing discussions in the class, and those really have just started. So I've been asking students for extra credit to submit articles having to do with media to me, and along with some questions you think would be good provocative questions to kind of guide a class discussion. And I actually chose one student submission, and it was really about beauty and how that's interpreted. And I thought it was a good provocative article, and that was posted as your first article to be discussed. You're supposed to answer those questions and then comment on other people's posts. And those discussions, your postings and your postings on your classmates' postings, etc., that's all due today, I believe, at 6 o'clock. So the class is lectures about different media types every week. This is the first phase of the class, along with you kind of dealing with that particular media type in your own lives and kind of talking about how it's impacted you as a member of the audience. Remember, the name of this class is Audiences in Media. And then we're also having class discussions about different topical articles, different newsworthy articles having to do with what's going on in the media. Everybody with me? Okay. And we're going to work our way through all the media types. Radio will be after magazines. That'll be our 6th lecture. Then we'll talk about television. We'll talk about internet and mobile. And then we will review. And the next phase of the class will be talking about media planning. And as a member of a team, you'll be working on a media plan for something TBD. Okay, so that's a kind of a general look at what we're trying to get done here. Okay, so with that in mind, let's now start our lecture. It's the 5th lecture, direct mail in magazines, and that's my name, that's my email if you need to get in touch with me. And our agenda today is I want to spend a minute or two reviewing our copy strategy template. The acronym for that is Tabasco. Then we'll get to the lecture, and then after the lecture I will be posting a quiz which you will have to complete. And that's where we're going. So when we talk about print, everyone, let's get back to slideshow. There are a number of characteristics that print, kind of all the different kinds of print, have in common. A real advantage of print is that it has a lot of staying power, because it's a printed thing with pictures and words, and you carry it around and you can look at it and keep it as long as you want, whether it's a newspaper or a magazine or whatever it is. So there's also pass-along readership. You can give it to a friend to read. So also print, except for newspapers, print has very good color reproduction, which is important particularly for fashion and beauty brands. Magazines have some specific advantages as well. They tend to have a very strong fan base and loyal readership. People who subscribe to magazines generally really like the content, and the people who write the content. That's a real strength of magazines, in addition to the staying power and depth of sale. One of the issues with magazines, however, is some of them are very long and they have a lot of ads. If you think about magazines, particularly like Vogue, for instance, or Elle magazine, unless someone goes through every page of the magazine, your ad may not be seen. So that's why positioning in the magazine is so important and such a big part of any magazine buy that you might make. You'll be negotiating where in the magazine your ad appears, and you're obviously going to pay more for locations in the magazine, positions in the magazine with the most readership or the most people looking at them, like the back cover, like opposite the table of contents. Most magazines, pretty much all magazines these days, have companion websites, and they are more and more pushing their readers to not have the printed version, but to go to the online version. And with printed magazines, there's also the case that many of these have a long lead time. So if you prepare an ad and you want to get it out there right away, some of the traditional magazines are not going to be the right medium for you. And in addition to magazines today, we're going to talk about direct mail, the classic format, and some other formats of direct mail. Okay. So we're going to talk first about direct mail and then about magazines. So that's what people's mailboxes used to look like, and some people still do. I don't know if you guys have a mailbox that looks like this yet, because you may not be on enough lists. You may not be in enough databases to have your name and address shared with among lots of catalog companies. Your parents probably have mailboxes that look like this from time to time. Of course, we all know the best kind of mail to get is typically anything with a check in it. I also happen to like personal letters, which are fairly infrequent these days, it seems. But there is a mailbox. Now, I think it is fair to say, based on direct marketers' opinions, that mailboxes are not as cluttered as this anymore for the most part. Many direct marketers have backed away from using direct mail as extensively as they used to. And they can reach their own customer base on their own database with email, right? And so they'll send a great email and they'll communicate that way. So this is a mailbox, but these mailboxes are not quite as full as this most of the time, except maybe around Christmas or the holidays. I always like to start with definitions, and here's a definition of direct mail. Unsolicited advertising sent to prospective customers through the mail. Sometimes sent to current customers too, by the way, fairly often, particularly in the past, and still today it is. Here are some of the classic mail designs. It's called a self-mailer. There's a classic format, catalogs, and co-op mailings. And we're now going to take a quick little walk through each one of these with some examples. So here's a self-mailer. Self-mailer is like a postcard. It's the cheapest kind of thing to do in direct mail. If you want it to stand out, you'll do a die cut like this and have a little fun with it. But you'll see the addresses on the back, some information about whatever you're selling, and some kind of way for the customer to respond to you. So it's cheap, and you can create it so that it stands out and maybe someone will look at it. But obviously you don't have time for a lot of depth of sale or persuasion here. The format is just too limited. And now we're going to talk about the classic direct mail format. And there are different elements to a classic direct mail package. The first one is the outer envelope. And what I'd ask you to think about here is, what is the purpose of the outer envelope of a direct mail piece? And if the answer you come up with is, the purpose is to say, don't throw me away, open me, you are correct. Typical consumer takes about 7 seconds to decide what to do with a direct mail piece. So the envelope has to have an offer on the outside and let them know there's something worth opening for. It has to intrigue the person somehow. And if you think about emails, the subject line of an email is really the same thing. The purpose of the subject line is to make sure that you open the email. Here is a several-year-old classic direct mail piece, kind of opened up for us to look at. On the lower right, you have the envelope with the address box there. You have a letter. You can see that just to the left of the envelope, it says The Advocate, good news, etc., etc. This one says, Dear Friend. Not the best way to do it. These should really be personalized. The purpose of the letter is to talk directly to you, make you feel as if you're being spoken to like a human being. Most people don't read every word in the letter. These letters are typically laid out so that you kind of look at the underlying areas and sort of get the general idea here. And this kind of deepens the sale and tells you more about whatever is being offered here, and also would repeat the offer. You then have a brochure up on top here, the Advocate C3 Free. This is where you bring the product to life. You show pictures of it. You really get someone interested in the product. And then on the left, you have a response device, which some people say is the most important part of the mailing. And now I'm going to